perception of time directly affects your happiness and even your sense of purpose. These last 5 years, they probably disappeared in a blink for you.
Living on autopilot is the absolute enemy of memory. Your life is going to feel incredibly short. Your brain is locked in a continuous survival mode.
How do we slow down time without changing time itself?
Have you ever just stopped, looked up from your coffee, and realized that an entire year it just evaporated?
Oh, yeah. It's a completely jarring feeling.
Right. You know logically that you lived all 365 days of it, but the actual texture of those days, the details, they're just, completely blurred out.
And we'll contrast that with how childhood felt, right? A single summer vacation when you were 10 years old felt like an entire lifetime.
Oh, totally.
You
Yeah.
could fit a whole, cinematic universe into just the months of June and July.
Mhm.
But these last 5 years, they probably disappeared in a blink for you.
Yeah, and the paradox is the mechanics of the universe haven't shifted at all. I mean, a minute is still exactly 60 seconds, a day is 24 hours.
Exactly.
Yet our internal speedometer is just completely out of sync with the clock on the wall. So, welcome to the Living Better podcast.
And remember, living longer is a science. Living better is a choice.
Love that. Thank you all so much for joining us today. If you enjoy these honest, kind of messy conversations, definitely like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us reach more people who are just, trying to live better, not just faster.
Yeah, we really appreciate you being here.
Real quick disclaimer, though, before we get into it. This episode touches on some neuroscience, psychology, and perception. It's for educational purposes only, so not a substitute for professional medical advice.
Right. And our goal for this episode is really to explore whether time is actually moving faster or if something inside us is changing, and more importantly, how we can practically slow it down.
Which is so relevant right now. We live in this era of just constant stimulation, right? Like notifications, short form content, everything is designed to compress our attention.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
We're doing way more, but we're remembering so much less. And why this matters for you listening right now is that your perception of time directly affects your happiness, your stress levels, your memory, and even your sense of purpose.
Yeah. I think the guiding thesis here is really your life is not just what happens to you, it's what you remember happening.
That is perfectly said. And looking through the research we have for today, the biggest misconception we had to dismantle right away is that the brain operates like a stopwatch.
Like it's just ticking away seconds in the background.
Exactly. But there is no internal ticking clock. The brain doesn't track time. It constructs the perception of time. And it does this using the hippocampus.
Right, which is the region of the brain that's primarily responsible for learning and memory formation, correct?
Spot on. So the consensus in all these cognitive psychology journals is that our perception of how much time has passed is inextricably tied to memory density.
Memory density.
Okay, yeah. Basically, the volume of new memories you create dictates the length of your perceived timeline. More memories make time feel longer. Fewer memories make it feel shorter.
Oh, wow. Okay, that completely demystifies that childhood phenomenon we were just talking about. Because when you're a kid, the entire world is novel. Your brain is just aggressively taking notes. You're learning the physics of riding a bicycle. You're navigating incredibly complex playground social hierarchies.
Tasting new foods for the first time.
Exactly. Your hippocampus is just constantly stamping fresh, vivid memories. So when you look back at being 10, the memory density is staggering. The year feels massive.
But then, we transition into adulthood. And the priority of the brain fundamentally shifts.
It becomes an efficiency engine. I was reading the metabolic data in these sources, and the brain makes up, about 2% of our body weight, but it consumes 20% of our energy.
Yeah, it's a massive energy hog.
So to keep us from constantly burning out, it seeks out predictability. Adulthood just becomes routine. You take the exact same commute, sit at the same desk, have the exact same surface level conversations.
It's all on autopilot.
Right. And I was trying to conceptualize this, and it feels exactly like a ZIP file on a computer.
Oh, I love that. That's a highly accurate way to visualize the cognitive compression happening. Walk us through that a bit more.
Okay, so when you compress a folder on a hard drive, the software algorithm looks for redundant data to save space.
Right.
If it finds 100 identical files, it doesn't waste storage, saving all hundreds separately.
It just saves one.
Exactly. It saves one baseline file and adds a little string of code saying, repeat this 99 times. The adult brain does the exact same thing with our routines to save metabolic energy.
That makes so much sense.
Right. It doesn't waste precious resources recording Tuesday's commute and Wednesdays and Thursdays. It records one baseline commute and just compresses the rest. So your entire year gets zipped up into this tiny, highly compressed file.
And then when you try to look back at your year, there's hardly any unique data there. It feels like nothing happened, so it feels like no time passed.
Yeah, it's wild. But beyond this metabolic efficiency and the ZAP file thing, Ethan, we also age. And there's some actual math working against us here, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. It's called the proportional theory. And it breaks down the sheer math of what a year represents based on your biological age.
Right.
At 10 years old, one single year represents 10% of your entire conscious existence.
Yeah.
That's a massive, highly significant chunk of your lived reality.
Oh, yeah. 10%.
But by the time you hit 50, a year is only 2% of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So objectively, the Earth's rotation isn't speeding up. But subjectively, just purely based on the math, a year feels fundamentally shorter because it's a constantly shrinking slice of your total pie.
Okay, so we have the math working against us and the ZIP file compression. But where it gets really interesting to me is the neurochemistry, specifically dopamine.
Oh, dopamine is fascinating here.
Because most of us just think of dopamine as a reward chemical, right? Like the
Yeah.
thing that makes us feel good when we eat sugar or get a like on social media.
Right. But its role in memory is arguably more profound. Dopamine acts as a signaling mechanism. It basically lowers the threshold for long-term potentiation,
Meaning what exactly?
meaning it enhances memory encoding. When you experience something genuinely novel like navigating a foreign city or wrestling with a new concept, your brain releases a surge of dopamine.
So it's essentially the brain's save button.
Yes, exactly.
It highlights the moment, telling the hippocampus, hey, this is unusual, this might be important for future survival, write this to the hard drive. So injecting novelty actually stretches the perception of time.
It literally forces the brain to lay down more tracks.
Okay, but I have to push back hard on this, just based on the world we actually live in today.
Okay, go for it.
If dopamine is the save button that stretches time, our modern lives should feel practically infinite
Uh-huh.
because we are all walking around with smartphones that are literally engineered to hijack that exact system. We're getting constant micro hits of dopamine all day long from push notifications, refreshing feeds, scrolling short form videos.
Right.
So, by that dopamine logic, an evening of doom scrolling should feel like a week. But instead, you sit on the couch, scroll for 3 hours, and it feels like 10 minutes just vanished into a black hole. Why does digital dopamine compress time instead of expanding it?
That is the perfect distinction to make because it exposes the huge difference between cheap chemical stimulation and actual cognitive encoding. The phone absolutely triggers the chemical hit.
Great, the dopamine is there.
It is. But for the hippocampus to actually build a rich, dense memory, it requires spatial, sensory, and narrative data. Think about the physical reality of scrolling.
You are entirely static.
Exactly. The hippocampus is deeply tied to our spatial navigation system. It uses what we call place cells to map our environment. When you're sitting on the couch staring at a screen, your physical environment hasn't changed at all.
The lighting is identical.
The ambient temperature is the same. There is zero physical or spatial scaffolding for the brain to hang a memory on. The brain thinks you've just been staring at a glowing rectangle in a cave for 3 hours.
Wow. So the dopamine is hitting, telling the brain to save the file, but there's no actual sensory data to put inside the file. It's just an empty folder.
Precisely. You get the illusion of stimulation, but it's cognitively hollow. And this leads us to another vital insight from the research attention equals time expansion. When your attention is fully unified, time feels richer and slower.
But the digital landscape trains us to do the exact opposite. We're chronically task switching. You read an email, check a text message, read a headline, swipe a video. You're shifting focus every 10 seconds.
And there is a massive metabolic cost to that context switching. Every time you shift your attention, the prefrontal cortex has to disengage from the previous rule set and load up a new one. The brain is frantically switching gears, constantly skimming the surface.
So it never sinks deeply enough into any one specific task to actually trigger the brain states required to encode a meaningful memory.
No, it doesn't. We fragment our attention so thoroughly that the brain just gives up on recording the day. Which brings up another huge factor that warps time stress.
Oh, yeah. The paradox of stress and time is wild. Think about an acute high adrenaline situation like suddenly skidding on an icy road.
Right.
In the moment, time seems to stretch into slow motion, right? Every fraction of a second feels distinct and elongated because the brain is suddenly hyper aroused, taking in maximum sensory data to figure out how to survive.
So theoretically, that memory should be incredibly dense, making it feel like a long period in hindsight.
Exactly. You'd think so, but it's the exact opposite. In hindsight, that skidding car memory feels incredibly brief.
Because under extreme stress, the encoding is completely chaotic.
Right. A massive flood of cortisol hits the system. And cortisol is fantastic for immediate physical survival. It gets glucose to your muscles, but it is highly toxic to the intricate memory filing systems of the hippocampus.
The brain prioritizes immediate reaction over organizing a cohesive narrative.
Yeah. And if you map that biological response onto our everyday lives, it gets pretty grim for the listener. Because most of us aren't skidding on ice every day, but we are living with chronic, low-grade stress. Deadlines, inflation, 50 emails a day.
And when you're in that state of chronic stress, your baseline cortisol is elevated. Prolonged elevated cortisol literally inhibits neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons, in the hippocampus.
Your brain is locked in a continuous survival mode, just trying to get you through the week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's definitely not dedicating energy to beautifully archiving the nuances of your Wednesday afternoon. So,
Yeah.
if you've had a highly stressful 6 months and you feel like that half year just vanished, that isn't a psychological failing.
It's a biological reality. Your brain physically suppressed the memory encoding process to survive the stress. But, science and mechanics only give us the how.
Right.
To really understand how to reclaim our time, we have to look at the human experience. Why do some specific brief moments seem to break all these rules and echo forever?
Like a really deep conversation, falling in love, or even a moment of profound grief.
Exactly.
This is where the amygdala steps in. It processes emotional significance. When an experience carries immense emotional weight, the amygdala essentially grabs the hippocampus and forces it into overdrive. It sears the moment into your neural architecture.
So emotional depth, not just novelty, bends time, which perfectly illustrates why living on autopilot is the absolute enemy of memory.
Autopilot is devoid of both novelty and emotional intensity. We're physically present, but mentally checked out.
Yeah, there's a study here about commuter amnesia. People drive 30 minutes to work and realize they don't remember a single second of the drive. The brain just handed the driving over to the habit center and went offline.
I actually had a stark contrast to that a few years ago. I spent 2 weeks traveling through a rural part of Japan.
Oh,
Yeah. And it wasn't an adrenaline-fueled trip, but every single day felt incredibly wonderfully long. Looking back, it is because autopilot was impossible. The language was different. The etiquette was different. Even buying a train ticket required my full presence. My brain had to stay awake.
see, I've experienced the dark inverse of that. A while back, I took on a massive project. I worked 12 to 14 hours a day for about 8 months straight. Wake up, work, eat at my desk, sleep, repeat.
Oh, that sounds rough.
I was highly productive. But if you ask me today to pull a specific memory from that 8-month period, I can't. It is a total void. And it taught me that busyness is not the same as living.
Wow.
You can be the most frantic, scheduled person on earth, but if your brain isn't encoding the moments, your life is going to feel incredibly short.
And that realization is why the practical application of this research is so urgent.
Mm.
How do we slow down time without changing time itself? How do we stop the ZIP file compression today?
Right. So let's break down some practical strategies for the listener based on these sources. What's step one?
Number one is to intentionally microdose novelty. You don't need massive extreme experiences to create new memories. Small novelties have a massive impact.
So we're not talking about like moving to a new country.
No, no, just walk a different route to the grocery store. Listen to a genre of music you usually hate while you cook. Just change your environment. It forces your spatial navigation and sensory processing to wake up and create new data points.
That makes sense. And strategy two deals directly with that cognitive noise. We have to ruthlessly deepen our attention and practice single tasking.
Yes. If task switching collapses time, the antidote is forcing your bandwidth onto one thing. Try eating a meal without your phone.
Right, without the screen, your brain suddenly has the bandwidth to process the actual texture and taste of the food. Go for a walk without a podcast, just listen to the ambient noise.
When you stay in one physical reality, the richness of that moment expands. Now, strategy three is fascinating. It leverages Daniel Kahneman's peak and rule to create memory anchors.
Okay, explain how that works. How does the brain edit an experience?
So our brains don't remember the sum total of an experience. When evaluating an event, the brain throws away the mundane middle parts and heavily weights two things: the most intense emotional peak and the very end of the experience.
Okay, so if you go on a week-long vacation, your brain doesn't average out all 7 days.
Nope. It remembers the afternoon you laughed until you cried on the beach and the feeling you had walking through your front door when you got home.
That is so true. So you can use this rule to intentionally engineer peaks and endings. Don't let a transition point, like a birthday or a trip, pass by on autopilot. Engineer a ritual. Plan an out-of-the-ordinary dinner.
Exactly. You are deliberately planting flags in the timeline of your year. So when December rolls around, you see bright markers, not just a gray blur.
Which leads right into the final strategy. Practice reflection to protect those emotional experiences. Memory encoding actually happens after the fact, mostly during sleep, right?
Yes. During the day, experiences are held temporarily in the hippocampus. To become long-term memories, they have to transfer to the neocortex. It's called consolidation.
And we can signal to the brain which files are worth consolidating. Just taking 3 minutes at the end of the day to physically write down 2 or 3 distinct things. A weird cloud, a good cup of coffee.
By writing them down, you tell your brain, this matters. Keep this. You're manually overriding the brain's deletion protocol. Don't just collect activities, collect meaningful moments.
Man, this has been such a great episode. Synthesizing all of this, the core rules are clear. The busier you are, the faster life feels. Routine is efficient, but it erases memory.
And slowing down isn't about doing less. It's about noticing more. A long life isn't measured in years. It's measured in moments we were truly present for. You don't need more time. You need more awareness within time.
That's the bottom line. You're not losing time, you're just being invited to live it differently. If this episode made you pause today, then it did its job. Please share it with someone who feels like life is just moving too fast.
We all know someone who needs to hear this.
For sure. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final kind of provocative thought to chew on.
Let's hear it.
If the subjective length of your life is ultimately judged by the density of your memories, think about the people you interact with daily. Your partner, your kids, your friends. Are you giving them the kind of undivided attention that will anchor them into your timeline forever?
Oh, wow.
Or are they just passing through your autopilot as you scroll? Remember, the attention you give to others today literally becomes the lifespan you get to look back on tomorrow.
That is powerful.
Thank you all so much for listening. Choose to live better today, and we'll see you next time.